These are tickets to the new Star Wars movie. That's right, I already have my tickets. Because I'm a fan. I've been a fan since the very first movie. I'm excited for the new movie to come out. Don't have to stand in line. I even was able to select my seats Lynn and I, these are for Lynn and I. We're going to go. You may not have these. These are mine. And as excited as I am about the premiere of the new Star Wars movie, I am rather sick of all of the crass merchandising for Star Wars that's going on. Have you noticed it's everywhere? Fast food places are using it to sell burgers. They're branding it on all kinds of things. They even have Star Wars pajamas that you can get. Lynn and I were at Target this week. We were doing some shopping, and we just happened to be going through the toy area. We have a couple grandkids, so we're going through the toy area there in Target, and there were these 2 4-foot-high Star Wars dolls, talking dolls. One of Darth Vader and one of an Imperial Stormtrooper, and you punch the button on the front of it, leave that to me. So come to the dark side, it'll be a hoot. And it's like, they were $100 a piece for these 4-foot-tall talking Star Wars dolls. And my question was, what parent would ever spend $100 on a 4-foot-tall doll that's taller than the kid that they give it to? What nightmares are you going to give your poor kid with giving him a talking Darth Vader doll? Well, the special effects in the original movie was just amazing. Come on, we have to admit it. The acting was pitiful, terrible, horrible. And episode 1 was just an embarrassment. Well, why do we love Star Wars? Why do so many people love it? It's because of the story. Even as bad as the acting was, there's something about that story that Lucas told that was just fascinating. I mean, we really want to know what's going to happen to those characters. And because it's not a story that we've heard before, we don't know what's going to happen to the heroes, And so we keep coming back. What's going to happen? And that's the big question. And of course, Lucasfilms and Disney have kept this so secret. We do not know what the story's going to be. We've seen the trailers, but it doesn't give anything away. It's just a super engaging story. We love a good story, don't we? There's something about the power of a well-told story. No one was a better storyteller than Jesus. And what makes his story so compelling is that while a J.R.R. Tolkien takes 400 pages to tell his tale, and a Lucas takes 2 hours, to tell his story, man, Jesus could tell this most compelling story in just a couple of minutes. And it would communicate a truth that was far more potent than anyone else. We're taking a look at one of Jesus' more well-known parables and stories today, the parable of the sower. Look at verse 1 again. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house, sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Now, Mark's gospel fills in some of the details on this. This takes place in the city of Capernaum, which is Jesus' headquarters in the region of Galilee. It's on the northern shore of the Lake of Galilee. It's been a long, hard day of teaching and healing many people. This day has also seen a rather nasty run-in with the Pharisees, and he's even had a bit of a falling out with his own family. His mother and his brothers have come, and there's been seeming a little bit of tension in the family. And so it's later in the day, and Jesus makes his way to the shore where it's a bit cooler, but the multitude of the needy is still pressing in around him. They still want more of him. And so he steps into a boat, and he pushes out a little bit so he can get away from the crowds and he can begin to teach. Now, we've been to Capernaum. It's on a little bit of a cove that makes a natural theater there. And so as he's now away from the shore a little bit, the crowd is standing on the shore. He begins to teach them. Verse 3, then he spoke many things to them in parables. In fact, here in chapter 13, Jesus speaks 8 parables to them. Okay, we're only going to take a look at the first one today, the parable of the sower. But he actually ends up giving them 8 short stories, saying, behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched. Because they had no root, they withered away, and some fell among thorns. The thorns sprang up and choked them, but others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. And then again, he says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now again, I want to ask you to try to picture this. Jesus is sitting just a few yards offshore. There's a large and eager crowd standing there waiting for him to tell them something. And what he tells them is a story. Now, Matthew jumps ahead in his narrative here. And he tells us about a conversation that Jesus had just with the disciples later. After telling us this in verses 10 through 23, he's going to return to telling the rest of the parables that Jesus told, one right after another in the boat. But Matthew wants to jump ahead to tell us why Jesus told the parables. So verse 10, and the disciples came to him and said, why do you speak to them in parables? See, this is later. This is later now. He answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore, I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, unless they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. Matthew inserts this conversation with the disciples that they had later, because it explains the reason that Jesus spoke to the people in parables now. You see, when he began to speak from the boat, the disciples were expecting him to give a straightforward teaching, as he had been doing up till this point. They were surprised then by the parables that Jesus begins to tell, and they later come to him and say, why have you switched your style from straightforward teaching to parables? What's going on? And he explains. You see, friends, it's now come to the point in Jesus' ministry where the opposition against him has become organized, and they are now plotting how to get rid of him. The people, the common people, are dividing into 2 different opinions about him. Some believe that he probably is the Messiah, and they listen to him eagerly, but others who are being influenced by the opposition and the critics of Christ, they're starting to harden against him as a dangerous threat to the status quo. And so people are starting to divide in their opinions about Christ. And so he switches from straightforward teaching to parables. And what he says here is this: to genuine seekers after God, the parables illustrate truth. They show the path to life. But for those who are hardening against him, the parables obscure the truth that they are rejecting. Their reaction to the stories that he's telling reveals the hardness of their hearts. And that's exactly what happens. When Jesus told these parables, he had 2 reactions. Those who believed in him rejoiced at the powerful way that he taught. The parables were for them wonderful illustrations. They were like windows that let in spiritual light. They gave people handles by which they could grasp the truths of the kingdom of God and put them into practice. But for those who rejected Christ, the parables were excuses to ignore him. They would say things like, why can't you speak plainly? Why are you telling all these silly stories? Just say what you mean. The thing is, Jesus had told them plainly, but they had rejected both him and his message. And so the parables were both, listen, the parables were both grace and judgment. Grace to those who believed because it helped them understand, but it was judgment to those who rejected Jesus. In their opposition, they spent no effort trying to understand. And that's why Jesus says here, look at what he says in verse 12, for whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, well, even what he has will be taken away from him. See, those who receive truth in the person of Christ are given more. Those who reject the one who is the truth will lose even whatever they have. Listen, God has given us many examples of spiritual truth in nature. The parables that Jesus told are true-to-life stories from daily experience that illustrate spiritual truth. Friends, the world around us is jam-packed with allusions to spiritual things. The closer you walk with the Lord, you can't go out in nature without seeing that all of the universe, it's like a huge whiteboard that God is writing spiritual lessons on. Your eyes just become open. You say, oh, this is an illustration. Oh, that's an illustration of God. But you know what? When you reject Christ, you lose the ability to understand what creation is screaming at us. What Jesus says in verse 12 is demonstrated in something as simple as a muscle. If you use a muscle, it stays healthy. If you neglect a muscle, it atrophies and shrivels. You know the old phrase, use it or lose it. The only way for us to get stronger is by working a muscle past its current limit. And the same thing applies to our minds. Use it or lose it. The more you stretch your intellect, the more the mind increases its capacity to process complex thoughts and ideas. So take your pick, whether it's brains or brawn. The physical world demonstrates the truth of what Jesus says in verse 12, use it or lose it. Those who reject the gospel lose their capacity to understand any and everything else. Let me say it again, because some of you need to hear this. Those who reject the gospel lose their capacity to understand anything and everything. Because the point of everything is a relationship with Jesus Christ. And the gospel is the message that brings us into that relationship. If you reject that relationship, you reject the very reason for your existence. And you will lose your capacity to understand anything. We must set ourselves to respond immediately and joyfully to God's word. Verse 18, Jesus goes on, therefore, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is he who received the seed by the wayside. You see, Jesus spoke of 4 different kinds of ground or soil that God's word can come to, the seed. And now he's going to explain this parable to the disciples. One of the things that you will notice as you tour Israel is how rocky and hilly the land is. There's limestone everywhere. But thousands of years of human occupation have seen the land developed into thousands of terraced hillsides. The fields are long, they're winding, they're narrow strips of land that are bordered by well-worn footpaths that have become like pavement because of all of the travel that's been on them over the years. So Jesus pictures a farmer who's gone out to his field with a seed bag. It's, over his shoulder, and he puts his hand in and he takes seed and he scatters it. And some of that seed lands on that footpath where thousands and thousands of feet have packed it down till it's rock hard. Now, seed is a great picture of the Word of God. A seed possesses almost unlimited potential to produce life. All that seed needs is good soil, which is precisely the lesson that Jesus is giving here. But this first ground that the seed lands on, it's the footpath. Seed that lands there can't penetrate. And so as soon as the sower moves on, birds land and they snatch it up. Jesus refers here to those who are too busy with what they call the realities of life to waste time on spiritual things. The wayside speaks of commerce, traffic, business. It's where the merchants' carts went. It's where the feet of those hurrying to make a deal tread. And as they pass, bent on their next appointment, they beat the ground until it's rock hard. These are those who are caught up in the frenetic pace of this dog-eat-dog world of competition and profits. These are the Ebenezer Scrooges of Dickens' classic Christmas story. The seed lands on the wayside, but it doesn't get in. And even so, hardened hearts, listen, hardened hearts hear God's word, but they don't listen to it. The word never penetrates because they've decided to be closed to it. Religion and all that God and Bible stuff may be fine for others, but they don't have time for it because it doesn't help their bottom line. They are genuinely secular. It's all about the here and now. But even Scrooge had his moments when he was still and quiet and reflective. There are times when the feet of these business-minded people have to stop and listen. Life throws them a curve. It might be because of a business failure or the death of a loved one, or a relationship that they have taken for granted comes crashing to an end. And then they're forced to face the questions that they've managed to avoid. It dawns on them they've neglected something important, that unseen part of their life. Maybe their stock portfolio is fat, but they realize that their soul is emaciated. C.S. Lewis captures perfectly this kind of person in the Screwtape Letters. I'm curious, can I see a show of hands? How many of you have read the Screwtape Letters? Would you raise your hand? This is a Christian classic we really all ought to read. C.S. Lewis, amazing author, wrote this little volume as though it was an older demon who's mentoring a younger demon on how to distract someone, a man, a human being. And it starts out, he's not a believer, but he ends up coming to faith in Christ. And so this younger demon is trying to keep him at first from coming to Christ and then later from growing in Christ, okay? And so Screwtape, the older demon, is writing to Wormwood, and he's sharing one of his experiences. And he says, I was once tempting this man whose train of thought could lead to a consideration of spiritual things that he had neglected all of his life. And then Screwtape suggests the man is in a place, or he's experienced something that's been kind of a setback, and he's been wondering, I've never really given much thought to my soul. Maybe I need to start thinking about my soul. And then Screwtape suggests to him, oh, you're hungry. You're hungry. Go get something to eat. And then he writes this, quote, once he was in the street, the battle was won. I showed him a newsboy shouting the midday paper and the number 73 bus going past. And before he reached the bottom steps, I had him into a conviction that whatever odd ideas might come into a man's head when he's shut up alone with his books, a healthy dose of real life, by which he meant the bus and the newsboy, was enough to show him that that sort of thing just couldn't be true. Friends, how many people today, their lives are all about the here and now. They're all about trying to increase their position. But they're in that moment of silence. Something's happened, and it's caused them to start thinking about eternal matters. And along comes the enemy, the bird, to snatch up the seed. What you need to do now is, well, where are these thoughts going to take you? Oh, you don't want to go there. Go turn on TV, pick up your iPad, check out the news. The wayside is a warning to people on the go who have no time for thoughtful contemplation of anything other than how they can maximize their profit, their power, their position, or their pleasure. Hey, listen, if that was a problem in the first century when Jesus first told that, how much more is that a problem in the 21st century? What profit would it be to gain the whole world but lose your soul? Verse 20, but he who received the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, well, immediately he stumbles. There are places in Israel where the soil is just a couple of inches deep over the limestone bedrock. Seeds that land in this kind of soil will shoot out roots, but when they hit the bedrock, the energy of the plant is redirected into the upward growth of the plant, and so it will shoot up very quickly, but it has no roots to draw up moisture, and so the plant quickly withers in the heat. This happens to some who hear the word. There's a quick emotional reaction to the offer of the gospel. The Bible, which people have assumed was irrelevant to them, they'll be in a sitting just like this. Oh man, this has happened so many times in our midst here at Calvary Oxnard, where people will come and they've always considered the Bible to be, it's a book of just legends and myths, it's old, 2,000 years ago. That has no relevance today. And they'll come and they'll hear just how incredibly relevant God's word is. And they get very excited. And they'll come back for a few weeks and because they're hearing new things and they're realizing, wow, this old book really does speak to my life. But when a challenge arises, they turn away. That challenge might be the mocking of a skeptic. Or it might be a trial that moves them to question God's goodness. These people get all excited by the advantages and benefits of the faith, but when they realize the cost of following Christ, that changes need to be made in them, they lose interest. You see, they don't want the life that God's word brings. They want their life plushed up. When you share the gospel with these people, they often will respond with, and some of you have heard this from people you've been sharing the Lord with, and they'll say, oh, I tried that. It didn't work for me. It's from this crowd that some of Christianity's most committed enemies have come. They really do believe they gave God a try because they felt something emotionally. But it didn't seem to work for them, and so they conclude that it must be false, and if it's false for them, it's false for everybody else. And so they devote themselves to the mission of convincing people to forsake faith. Verse 22, now he who received the seed among thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. This is potentially good soil, but when the seed springs up, weeds compete with it. Anyone who's tried growing a garden knows about weeds. They're just about impossible to avoid. They grow around flowers and fruit, and if they're not removed, they'll steal the moisture and the nutrients of the soil. Some seeds will actually wrap themselves around other plants and choke them. And that's precisely the idea here. Worry and greed compete with the effect of God's word. That phrase there, Jesus says, the cares of this world, is literally the distractions of this age. Now, who here doesn't know about that? The age in which we live has distraction down to a science, does it not? Marketing and consumer research pour billions of dollars into figuring out how to get our attention so they can pitch us their products. All advertising aims at creating an anxiety in us that moves us to get this or buy that will make our lives complete. And now with wireless communications, we can be plugged into the machine 24/7. In fact, some people are. I mean, have you seen people walking around with the earbud in, on their phone? One of the things that I find so... should I share this? One of the things I find so annoying is when you pull up to a red light and people are leaving like 2 car lengths between them and the car in front of them. And the reason why is because as soon as they stop, they're on their phone like that. And they don't know this, so the car's moved up. It's like, I've been using my horn more liberally lately. I admit it. It's supposed to have a law against using devices in our cars, and people just utterly ignore the law. But especially young people today. I mean, we talk about being connected. They're more disconnected than ever because they're all in their own little world, listening to their own thing. And don't worry about being able to afford all this stuff that the ads push, because here's a credit card. Friends, there's a master strategy behind all of this, behind all of the distractions. The Bible calls Satan the god of this age, the ruler of the power of the air. He's the primary influence that's driving the direction of the world. He fears the power of God's word, and so he keeps people busy with endless distractions. This third soil is the divided heart, pulled by conflicting loyalties, a love of the world and the love of God. The people described here are like the woman that a young man proposed to. He said to her, "Darling, I love you more than anything else in the world. Please marry me, but I have to warn you that I'm not rich. I don't have a yacht. I don't have a Rolls Royce like Johnny Brown, but I do love you with all my heart." And her reply was, "I love you too, but tell me more about Johnny Brown." How many people have heard about the love of God and all the benefits that He wants to pour out on their lives? And they say, "Oh, that sounds great, but what about the world? What about what the world has to offer?" And Jesus made clear in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, that we can't love both God and mammon, which is the mammon is, we often say it's money, but it's really what money is able to do in this world. It's the picture of worldly success. The Apostle John warned that the love of the world and the love of God are mutually exclusive. Some people begin well. We assume that they are followers of Jesus Christ, but there's a root of worldliness that they never repent of. And over time, it grows and eventually strangles their faith. Friends, look around. Who's not here today that used to be here? Who's not here? I've been doing this now for 33 years. There's too many people not here because the love of the world choked out their love of God. Verse 23, "But he who received seed on the good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Of the four soils, only this produces fruit. And fruit is what the sower wanted all along." A seedling isn't what God looks for. A weed-choked plant isn't the goal. What the sower wants is fruit. Anything else or less is pointless. Jesus makes clear that some produce more fruit, some less. But he's not concerned so much about how much as that there is fruit. The point of this parable is this: be careful how you respond to God's word. Be careful. What's your reaction to the word of God? And do not give a show of hands. Are you excited about coming to church on Sunday morning? Are you excited? Or is it, I hope they're selling some good donuts this morning. There should be an excitement at the prospect of going to church and hearing the Word of God taught. There should be how do I rearrange my schedule so I can go to Wednesday night? How can I carve out some time every day where I can pick up my Bible and let the Holy Spirit scatter life-giving seed into my heart and my mind? If our attitude towards the Word of God is, here we go. Do I have to? I know I should, but Listen to the lesson of this parable. What's your reaction to the Word of God? if your heart's cry is, Lord, put seed, oh Lord, give me seed. Do you understand? You have the capacity. God has created, He's birthed within you an openness to revelation by the Spirit that He's just going to keep showing you more marvelous things. But if your attitude is, oh man, here we go again, you're diminishing in your capacity not just to understand spiritual truth, but to understand anything about anything. Use it or lose it. What's your basic attitude towards Scripture? Do you regard the Bible as a curiosity, an ancient relic of religious superstition? Is it filled with contradictions and myths that have no relevance today? Are you that person that thinks that you live in the real world of cold, hard facts, but you don't have time to waste on something that's so useless as the Bible? If that's your take, you're the wayside, the footpath of this parable. Or did you have some kind of an emotional encounter with God and you went to church for a while, but as quick as it started, it ended. Until now, you thought that you gave Christianity a try, but it didn't work out. You're the shallow soil. Please understand, you weren't really converted. You tried your idea of Christianity, but you never tried Christ. Or maybe you went to church for a while, but eventually you just lost interest. You grew weary of the struggle between God's Word and what you wanted. And truth be told, the world won. If you're here today, obviously you're here, you're hearing this. Do you know someone that you thought was a committed believer? I mean, maybe that's the very person that led you to the Lord. And they're not here today because they've walked away. Pray for them. God is looking for spiritual fruit. His Word must produce lasting change in us. Friends, as we end, let's collapse the last 2,000 years and join that crowd standing on that shore there in Capernaum. What Jesus said to them, He says to us, be careful how you hear. Be careful how you hear. Are you producing fruit that remains? Are you growing in grace and truth? Are your best days in walking with God ahead of you or behind you? Going to church isn't fruit. Putting a CCO sticker on your car isn't fruit. Having a big old study Bible, a Bible that's so big it's got 2 wheels on it and a handle because you have to carry it like this. That's not fruit. That may be a stalk. It may be some green leaves, but it's not fruit. Fruit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, kindness, self-control. Those are the fruit that God is looking for. That's what He's looking for. Fruit that remains. Let God's Word birth God's life in you.